See, like hopefully I don't blab, but I can sometimes go into tantrums. So just like, oh.
Of an imposter syndrome kind of thing.
Yeah, and you're like, what's wrong with me? Am I like a bit weird? But I think the key to minimal design is not about not having stuff. It's about creating space that can store it. Eventually, house will explode. So kind of laughing and crying. Some clients are a little bit, they just like a bit of everything. And if you put a bit of everything, then it will look like a bit of everything, but in nothing at the same time. So I like my systems. I like my spreadsheets. Oh my God. And like start panicking and running around a headless chicken. And that's not helpful for anyone. If clients listening, I haven't been forcing anything on you.
Welcome to Redeco Room, a podcast that uncovers the world of design, one conversation at a time. In today's episode, we are joined by Kashi, an interior designer who founded her own studio 12 years ago. After realizing that no existing practices were capturing the style that she envisioned, her work blends minimalism, Scandinavian, and Japandi aesthetics, all grounded in function and calm. We talked about what it really means to live with minimalism and how to keep it this way, how to navigate client relationships, and what common pitfalls to avoid when hiring a builder. As Kashi beautifully puts it, managing an interior design project is like entering into a relationship. The key is to treat everyone involved with respect. Enjoy. Thank you so much for coming to the Designer Spotlight. It's really nice to have you. Would you mind introducing yourself and telling more about yourself and the Yam Studio, a little bit about kind of what the concept is?
Yeah, my name is Kashi. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
So I'm an interior designer. I run my own studio called Yam Studios. I started it about 12 years ago. It's actually, it's just been an anniversary of 12 years. So it's been quite a while, which doesn't feel that long. But the reason I started it because when I was working for other studios, I kind of struggled with the style, which is very common in London. So I wanted to work on something more Scandinavian, Japandi, something more simple and understated. And I find like I couldn't really find studios at the time, at least, who were doing that. And I kind of struggled with that a little bit because I didn't feel like I was doing design, which I believed in. And that's why I decided to go and start on my own and maybe kind of just do something I really believe in and kind of what I care about. That's why I started Yam Studios. And I guess since then, I've been attracting the clients who were looking for that. So it's kind of nice because I kind of created a studio for design I liked, and then people who come to me, they're really looking for it. And it's really nice to have that environment because I kind of really connect to the clients. So this really personal connection, there's a deep connection there in terms of like what we both value, I guess. And I guess this is what also Yam is all about. I like to create homes that are beautifully designed, very detailed, but in very understated way. So it's really simple and very effortless, and the homes feel very calming and nurturing, where you kind of come in home and you just feel like you just can breathe out. That's kind of always the ethos I wanted to create. And then after doing it for 13 years, this is the feedback I get from clients, is how they feel in the home. So I kind of have now a proof that, I'm achieving what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So, and I guess that's what I kind of keep doing. And I guess I'm always evolving and changing slightly directions, but that's still the ethos, create kind of simple, beautiful homes that very thought through and detailed out, but at the same time, they don't scream at you in any way. So they kind of invite you, nurture you. So I guess that's kind of what I'm doing.
One word that I found on your website was harmonious. And I'm like, this is not a very commonly used word, but it's so well describing as well.
Yeah. I think it's just the kind of the balance I always find, because I guess when you walk into the space, it makes you feel a certain way. And I find maybe it's just the way my brain works. Whenever I walked into spaces that feel very balanced and harmonious, I just feel very good in them. Like my soul just like relaxes. Yeah. And over time, when I've been analyzing spaces and even my own designs, like if I finish a project, it's like, why this project feels good? Why it doesn't feel quite right? Because sometimes you don't get things right, and almost understanding. And I feel like the harmony of everything working together is actually quite important. So it's not about one big statement. It's more about like, I see good design for me, like certainly it's the whole thing. It's not just about one piece. It's about everything going together and creating this harmony of balance. And I feel like this is what speaks to me. But then because of that, I create that people who come to me, they have the same value. And I feel like this is where it works quite well, because I can do what I believe in and can give it to people who also want the same things. And it works really, the relationship then is much smoother as well.
Of course. But also like kind of it's so much of your own reflection of the world, and then in the design, that it's kind of just inviting other people along. It feels like then they're like, okay, yeah, I see like this inside out.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of actually nice to know that there are other people who have the same values as you, because sometimes you might, that is my view, but then I'm the only one who values that, and you feel a bit like, what's wrong with me? So when you get other people coming to you and confirming that they are also into the same things as you, you kind of, okay, so I'm not total loner with that. So, it's quite nice to find I guess you kind of find your tribe in a way.
Yeah.
Kind of doing what you believe in, and then when there's other people who believe the same, you create this kind of, it's a tribe, it's kind of confirmation. Okay, there are people who need that, who value that, so you feel like your service does provide something useful. So it's not like you just have some weird ideology who no one else believes in, where you feel a bit like left alone with that.
A bit of an imposter syndrome kind of.
Yeah, and you're like, what's wrong with me? Am I like a bit weird? So it's actually, okay, no, maybe I'm a bit normal.
I think you're very much so, especially like now, like over the last 10 years, it seems like it keeps on growing and growing and growing. Like the whole interest in this candy and the calmness and the whole ethos of living like this.
Yeah, I think it probably did change a bit with COVID, because obviously at that point everyone was at home, stuck at home. And I feel like at that point maybe people start maybe questioning a little bit more, what does home mean for them? And I guess home become kind of everything. It become, obviously family home, like space you eat, space you drink, space you spend your time with family, space you sleep, but also it become working space, it become gym, it become everything. And I feel like people probably did realize how it plays a role for, create space for you where you feel comfortable in, and partially creating home that works, but also that maybe makes you feel secure and kind of safe. I guess that's probably maybe become more aware of it, and people become more aware of it, and also the kind of whole calm element of it, because I guess it was a quite unsettling, scary times for everyone, and having some sort of safety place to be with the family, and also where you could find your own space, because when you're all stuck at home with a family, creating also environment where you can retreat and have your own time, where you can recover, because, depending on who you are, like, I guess everyone kind of needs space for themselves as well, and having space where that allows you to kind of have this calm moments of just being on your own and reflect, as well as then go and reconnect to your family. I guess I feel like people do demand a little bit more functionality, but also calmness in the homes.
Oh, yeah. But how would you actually, like, given that the home kind of changed so much, as you mentioned, during COVID, how do you fit all those different functionalities into like small spaces that London actually provides?
Yeah, that's really hard, because actually I just finished the project in Notting Hill, which was really fun to work with, because they were amazing clients, they had amazing taste, but also they had lots of typical demands of the family, where there's a storage. Usually storage is a big concern, especially in small London spaces. And they had a 4-story home, but because it's London home, which is like typical skinny home, it's actually really hard to utilize the spaces efficiently, because they're not actually that big, because it's classic London properties. And then it's just kind of, it's always push and pull between the aesthetic and functionality. And I always say, like, especially with the kind of Scandinavian simple minimalist design, I think often the preconception is people who live in this kind of homes, they don't have stuff. And that's wrong. That's very wrong, because none of my clients had no stuff. Everyone has a lot of stuff, because you need it. It's part of life. You need certain things to function, to live your life. I guess they're there for, they have sentimental values, like photos, little objects you collected maybe on holidays, like things like that. As well as like, sometimes you just have spare income, you can have more clothes than, if you have a good income and spare income, you want to enjoy it. So of course you will buy things that bring you joy. But I think the key to minimal design is not about not having stuff. It's about creating space that can store it. Obviously, there's a balance. You can't just keep hoarding, and eventually house will explode. So you need to find the balance. The things you don't care about, they should be really thrown away. But storage is always a big problem for most of my clients, especially with families with kids, because that comes with whole another level of stuff.
Then the whole minimalism can
the minimalism
can be part
of the two things which are like don't really go together very well. So I feel like usually the point where I start from, obviously this one side is the aesthetic they want to achieve. And usually, like starting point is always something quite simple, quite calm, but that is always very tied in with the storage. And I feel like this is where I always start with. It's just like, how do I design the home, how the layout can work so it feels like open, beautiful, calm, by same time can create the spaces so all the things which you don't want to see can be put away. So, and then I guess this is where for me, like joinery design is quite big part of my process generally, like because joinery is usually it becomes skin of the building, it's the design, it's the language of the architecture. By same time, it has the function of storing all the stuff. Okay. So, and I feel like that's very always my starting point. And then I'm kind of in with the joinery, then I can express the aesthetic, whichever is required for the project. But also I can make sure there's plenty of space utilized in a very efficient way. And the layout works in a way so you don't necessarily also feel like you live in a storage room. Because that's another thing. Like you don't want to feel walking into, space where you just wardrobe. So it kind of like, I feel like this is where I find that balance between finding the design language and express it with joinery, which also has the main, I think, practicality element. It does work practically. And then also that can work then with the other functions of the home, like, like home has to function, it has to be heated, it has to be cooled, it has to, have hot water, all the kind of mechanical, electrical elements of it. And that also where I kind of bring in joinery for that, where I can hide all the stuff that house requires to be comfortable home, but then you don't see all of that as well. So like that project I mentioned in Notting Hill, which was actually really hard because there was so much going into that home. So we try to maximize the space for the client so they have enough storage so it looks beautiful same time, but also all the stuff which make the home function can be fitted in but without wasting too much space. So this is where like AC, we were hiding it in joinery, but then creating custom grills so they look very beautiful. So you kind of don't really notice there's AC there. But at the same time, you can remove things to, if something goes wrong, you can repair it. So it's really hard work. And it's not just up to me as well, because I have to work with the team. I have to work with M&E consultants because I'm saying, I don't want your ugly AC anywhere. Yeah. Let's hide it. How can we hide it? I want it to look like this. How can we make it work? So they are there to that. But then there's a joiner there as well. Well, technically we can do that. So you work as a team. And then if everyone has this can-do attitude, you can really get there. But it takes a lot of time, lots of meetings. And like this project, the amount of hours I talked about AC is insane. I mean, I think on the end, we all were like kind of laughing and crying because we couldn't even think about AC anymore because it took so much of our brain space. But now, like, it looks very neat. It looks very kind of, you wouldn't really notice it there because the house before had AC. But then it was very obvious. You walked in, the spaces were like laid out really weirdly and you had these grills everywhere, access panels, they were really horrible. So you want all of that. You want the functionality of it, but you don't want to see it. So how do you design that? Because I don't want to create home which looks beautiful, but then if AC goes wrong, then they have to destroy the whole wardrobe to, it's a balance. Oh, yes. But then how do you make it practical without making it look like access panels everywhere. So that was just, and that's is usually every project has that. Like there's like this balance between, okay, the house has to look beautiful, but it has to work. And I feel like this is where good design comes in because you need to provide both. Oh, yeah. And I hate to be a designer who creates beautiful home, takes photos and they look great, but then months later the house doesn't age well or things are hard to maintain. And I think I've done mistakes over the years and I probably still will do because it never changes. But that's something I learned over the years to think about the end user and how they're going to live in that home, how long it will last them. And
interesting because you're touching on so many interesting aspects of it, of like the functionality and actually usability of the home. And especially in such a minimalistic aesthetic or just very clean aesthetic. Somehow, if the functionality is not done properly, it can become cluttered so quickly. Yeah. Because things move around all the time. Yeah. And there are so many things. And as you're saying, like the importance of the design, actually how the things are thought through. Yeah. In terms of like, oh, the person moves this way and they're probably going to use this stuff. Like, what was the biggest aha moment for you, like during your journey of like actually coming to that process that you have right now?
Yeah, I guess it's like, partially, I feel like sometimes when you kind of study design and then become qualified as designer, there is a certain, I feel like when you're really young and starting the career, there's an element of arrogance in you. And I feel like that's all of us go through that because we feel like we're like such a creative geniuses and we know it all. And we come out with this attitude in a way. But I feel like as you start working with real people in the real world, you realize you kind of get feedback over time. And also you make mistakes because you realize, I think, like probably with any job, you realize the complexity of it. The more you know, the more you realize how much you don't know. I think in the beginning you don't know much and you feel like you know everything, but that's, I don't know, what's it called, Kruger effect or something? I feel like as you age and mature, you realize you learn more, but then you realize there's much more to learn. And I feel like that was part of the journey, just doing the job, making mistakes, getting feedback from the clients once they moved in and lived in there, things that work, things that don't, and kind of listening to that, take them on board. Because sometimes it's really hard to actually take these things on board because you do feel like your ego has been a bit hurt because you're like, oh, you know, no one likes to admit mistakes. But I feel like that was a big lesson for me as the time gone by, just not get defensive about mistakes or admitting that you made mistakes or listen to clients or like even contractors, like people, technically advanced people like builders, joiners, M&E consultants. If you want to do something and they question it or advise you, not get defensive about it, just feeling like, oh, you know, they think I don't know what I'm doing. Because the thing is like they're experts in their field. If they advise you, it's good to listen to them. If you agree with them, that's a different thing because there's a push and pull about because it's what you want to achieve and what they tell you. In this, you kind of always need to feel a middle ground because, you know, if it was all to M&E and builders, everything would just look really ugly and horrible and visible everywhere. And, you know, and plant room will take half the house. You can't do that. So as a designer, but you need to kind of find this push and pull, but you need to listen to them. And I think the same, listening to clients about the feedback in home and just learning from the things and knowing, okay, these things work well. I can carry on doing that. These didn't quite work. What can I do better next time? And I feel like, that was kind of over time, that's what I learned, just to kind of maybe put the ego aside a little bit and just accept, and you don't know everything. And I feel like in this job as well, the reason why I like it, you never stop learning. There's always something you do new, and you're always going to test some new materials. And sometimes that's scary because you do it on behalf of your clients. And then hoping, because people sell you stuff, you know, like there's new material, oh, it's amazing. And you're like, oh, right, it looks cool. And then you use it and then you realize actually it wasn't that great. And then
and then the project is done.
But then project is done, client pay for it, and you're like, oh, just making sure whatever you suggested, you kind of do a bit of due diligence as well. Just make sure you research it as well. But that's sometimes comes with time, and the more you do it. But I feel like to let the ego behind and kind of accept, and you need to learn from your mistakes. This is what are really key to this job, to kind of get better and better and better. Because in a way it's not like in sports, you know, where you're young, you're very good, but you peak quite quickly. And then, you know, once you're certain age, you're kind of done. With this job, I feel like the older you are, the better you get. I mean, unless you stop caring, because that can happen. But like if you keep being open and learn, I feel like with age, you just only get better because the level of experience you have. And I feel like just being open to that, just knowing, then you just keep learning, and you're going to keep making mistakes, but then learning from them and learning from people around you, and like respect them for that as well. Just respect the others as well around you. Just not just feel like I'm designer, I'm the one who tells what to do. I feel like that was kind of over time what changed my attitude towards design as well.
If I got it correctly, you primarily do residential buildings. Yeah. That there's the client, there are the builders, and then there's you. And how do you manage this whole dynamic of who has the say in the end, and how to find the common balance, and how to ensure that the result is actually something that you're coming towards?
Well, I guess that's always push and pull. But I think what I learned generally, like at the beginning of a project, before even we're thinking about construction, I usually spend lots of time with clients developing the scheme. So we have a lot of conversation between us first. Like I'm listening to them, what they want to do, what they like to achieve. And then we go through the process together where I design according to the needs and what they gave me, with obviously my input as well, because sometimes they give you very confusing brief and you're like, that's just together makes no sense. And then you kind of need to find a narrative. Some clients are a little bit, they just like a bit of everything. And you're like, well, if you put a bit of everything, then it will look like a bit of everything, but in nothing at the same time. So you kind of need to find a narrative, but then you kind of walk with them with the designs, as the process goes, they kind of realize more and more their needs, and then you adapt the design accordingly. So this whole process through that. So I kind of guide them through it, and then by the same time I listen to them because they know how they live their life on a daily basis, and they need to inform me about that. But sometimes they need to see something to kind of really think about it. Certain nuances they might not even realize themselves until they see something. They're like, oh, actually that works. Actually this won't work, because some people always have their own ways. So I feel like that's kind of like how I manage with the client, but I usually guide them through it. And obviously they come to me because they trust me already. They let themselves being led by me. So there's lots of trust there. And then when we kind of have the design together, then we start working on the construction. Usually good builder, they don't want to be involved in the design and sourcing. They want to be told what we want to achieve, and they just want to build it. So, and actually that's where they like to work with me, because usually I'm very I guess I'm half German, so I'm very particular. I like my systems. I like my spreadsheets. So I'm not just like creative. I'm just like, spreadsheets. It's all about spreadsheets. So I really like to give the detail I want, so they know what they need to build, and I want them to know that ahead. But obviously they bring the know-how, because there's certain things I want to achieve. Sometimes I might not quite sure how it will work, so they need to guide me. Over the years, lots of details I already know how they can be done, because I've done them. I've done it with other builders, so I learned that. But there's always something I'm trying, and I'm like, I like it to do like this. How can we build it? In that sense, builder usually just follows what I tell them to do. And whenever there is some question or some problem, which thinks something's happened, you might not be able to do quite something as you expected, they usually come to me for the design solution. So like when you work with good builder, they're never going to go ahead and do that. So I feel like there's a balance. Usually how balance is everyone trusts each other. We work as a team, and we kind of, asking each other how to achieve it. But I feel like I'm usually there who has the vision and the whole picture in mind. And everyone comes to me for that. But then there's like little things like, maybe some functionality needs to change, and that's a client needs to input into that vision. So usually there's like, okay, XYZ came up, we need to change this. Like things like that. And then at that point, client needs to input in terms of, because it's their final decision, because it's affecting them directly. If it's something more detailed, aesthetic, which client might not even notice, but it's something more like important to me, like as this skirting has to meet this wall in particular, client not gonna, often they don't care as much. Some clients are very particular, so they do care. But like details like that, I can resolve myself with the builder. And if there's something builder say, well, actually I can't do that, they come usually with solutions, we can do it different way. And then at that point we decide. So there's kind of like, I feel like the project, I'm usually the one who keeps the vision in mind, and then it's constantly kind of like tapping into everyone else, just make sure everyone's on the same page. It's like quite, I think being in the interior design, there's lots of teamwork and lots of input, and you kind of need to make sure everyone is aware. So you have to be quite a good communicator as well. If you don't communicate well, things can go the direction you don't want to, and people can be disappointed, because you always want to make sure client also knows what they're getting. Because if they have expectations and actually the expectations never were right, it can be disappointing for them. So just kind of managing that as well. So it's constantly like, kind of talking, moving, and being adaptable. You have to be quite adaptable as well.
Do you have like a team of builders that you usually recommend, or is it kind of like changes over time as well?
I guess, I have quite a few teams who I've been working with in the past, and I usually recommend them. And because I know there's a relationship there, they know the kind of details I do, they know, nuances of my design, and they know how to do them. But also like it's sometimes client might have their own builder already, and if they look, if I have a good feeling about them, I'm happy to work with them. If the client has a builder and I'm a bit nervous, I usually will express that. But I feel like these days, I have enough contacts so I can bring them to projects. Doesn't mean they don't disappoint you still, because sometimes you might work with someone for years, and then because they're kind of used to you, they're like, oh yeah, it's just Kashi, I don't have to try hard anymore. And they kind of disappoint you. And then you're like, okay, maybe this time to go different ways. So you always find new people as well. And I guess sometimes you evolve and they evolve, and you might go different direction. That's also fine. Also normal. Yeah, that's fine. Because sometimes, like certain builders might, they might work for you at the time when maybe the projects were a bit lower budgets and things, and they were good for that. But then maybe the finish wasn't super great, but that's what your clients could afford at the time, they were good enough. But as you kind of grow as a designer, you usually get bigger projects over time, and then you need to have more builders who have a bit more skill set. So it changes as well. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there can be a bit variation as well. How much, it's not, sometimes it's about how much people have to spend.
Yeah.
And I think these days I usually have that conversation very early on with clients, because in the past I didn't, and that came back to bite me quite badly a few times. And then I learned from that as well. Then you have to have the financial conversation with clients pretty much at the beginning before you even sign them up, which is a hard conversation to have, because it's almost like you're about to get married and go on a honeymoon, but you kind of need to talk about prenup. So it does feel like that, but it's a hard conversation you need to have, why everything is good. So if potential client come to me and they want to have a particular project and they have a particular budget, at that point, I'm kind of looking at all the previous projects and try to rationally think about, okay, is that realistic? And can they achieve that? And if I feel like, okay, it's fine, so okay, we can go ahead. But if it's a bit tight, I say, well, you either need to adjust your list or you need to up your budget. And we have that conversation in the beginning. And I give them estimates, but obviously every project is different, so it's not going to be 100%, but I have that conversation ahead of time, because then if they have a realistic expectation how much things cost, it means I can use a good builder who I know would do a good finish. I'm in point now where I just don't want to go with the most affordable builder, because I've done that in the past and it's never been good experience, because usually people who undercharge, they're usually not really sure what they're doing. And that occasionally maybe there was a builder who was just happened to be cheap and very good, because maybe they're starting out and they are talented, but over time the prices do go up. But usually people who are affordable, there's a reason for it. And that's not a very nice project to be on. So these days, if I feel like the budget is really tight and unrealistic, and they're not prepared to adapt the list or, up the budget, I usually say, sorry, I can't. It's not fair to promise something which they can't achieve, because I know they won't. And also, it's not nice process to go through. Because I know it will be painful. And if they want to go through that alone, despite my, it's up to them, but I just don't want to be dragged along with that, because I don't enjoy it and it's no point for me. So, but I try to have this conversation ahead. And to be honest, most good clients, they will listen and they will adapt each either way. And that always shows me that this client is a good client to work with, because they listen to you, they respect you. And that's always a good sign of character. And I guess that kind of characteristics I appreciate in the clients. And I know we're going to work well together. But if they're like dismissive, they're like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Then I'm like, well, yeah, that's not the person I want to work with. And maybe someone else can deal with that, but I'm not very good in dealing with that kind of characteristic.
Yeah.
It doesn't work well for me.
But also, as you're so far along in your career as well with the studio, and you've seen so many different people and so many projects and everything else. And if somebody comes in is so dismissive, then it's like, okay,
yeah, it's like a bit like, yeah. And I guess that's the thing as well. Like, I mean, with every relationship with design, like the projects take a while, most of my projects is on average 2 years. Often, if there's like new build, they take longer. Occasionally, they take a year, but most of the time, it's more than a year. So it's a relationship which gonna be there for a little while. So it's not just a month. So in a way, like I'm very conscious of that, and because I've been doing it for a while, and I worked with all different characters, I kind of learned what kind of people I get on with and what I don't. It's also the dynamic, because obviously one side they need to, obviously I'm looking for people who like the aesthetic I do, because that's the starting point. But also the personality has to match, the dynamic has to match, because you do work together. And if I feel uncomfortable or, and I feel like I'm not sure we're going to get on, even though they might be having perfect aesthetic, I will be hesitant to work with them, because it's not very fun to be in a relationship which doesn't quite work. And you kind of just want to finish as quickly as possible. It's like, and I realized as well over the years, because sometimes people say, oh, well, if it's a client which is annoying, you just charge them a lot. which sounds nice, but actually I've done that as well, but it's not fun either. So you still have to deal with them. So the money is not enough.
Oh my God. But this is so interesting, because kind of brings me to the question of like, what actually you wish people would know before they kind of get into that relationship and before they kind of like start actually working with the designers.
Well, one thing I think for them to know then the personality has to work as well, because I think they might not necessarily realize, they just think every designer can, do whatever, but the dynamic has to work. And usually people who are a bit older, they kind of know that. They know the person because they've been living their life. They know the dynamics of people do matter. But sometimes people might not necessarily realize that. So it has to be designer who kind of the dynamic of characters work. And I guess it does help to have someone who really understands your aesthetic. I think there are some designers who can be a little bit more flexible. Okay. They can kind of adapt to the client needs, which is I always quite impressed by, because I don't really know how you do that. But I guess some people are a bit more maybe vibrant or dynamic, or like want to do different things because maybe they get bored of one particular look or aesthetic. But so that's okay as well. But like if you have a very particular view about how the interior needs to be, it's good to go to someone who does more of that, because the relationship will be much easier. Then you will need to keep explaining what you're looking to do, because sometimes when designers specializes in one thing, or like say Olive Klein likes contemporary design, but they've been recommended designer who may be slightly more traditional, making sure okay, can that person actually do what we want? Because it might be easier just to go someone who already kind of has that aesthetic, because it will save lots of time of try to educate each other how to do this. So getting the right person to work with, and knowing then design takes time, because sometimes people come to me and just say, we need the designs in 2 weeks. I'm like, I need kind of few months to come up with design. It takes time. It's not something you just dream up. There's a process to it. It takes months to develop the scheme. It takes then more time to draw it up properly, because when you work with clients, you show them pretty pictures, you show them visuals, you show them materials, and it's all very fun and nice. But that material is not very useful for the contractor. If you give them lots of samples, they're like, great, I need to know where they go, where I get them from, I need drawings. Yeah. Obviously there's one point designing it and showing pretty pictures to client, just make sure they understand what they're getting, but then also documenting that to contractor, and that takes time. And understanding then you need to go to designer as soon as you can, really, because if you go to designer when you already start building, that's very tricky, because then there's not really much time. You can do that. It happens. Yeah, it happens quite a lot of the time, because people don't necessarily realize how many decisions they need to make. Yeah. I feel like sometimes people have preconception interior design is easy, because people feel like they live in interiors, they understand interiors, which is fair enough. But then when they go into the building process, they realize builders start asking them the difficult questions. Yes. And they're like, I haven't thought about that. And they realize the sheer amount of decisions they need to make and how these decisions affect each other. And I guess understanding that, then you need to make a lot of decisions. And if you do them ahead of construction, that will benefit everyone in the process. It will benefit them because they have time to think about it properly. It will benefit contractor because they just can go and build rather than just make up as they go, because that's not fun. And that also can result in some costs, which you never know how much your project will cost. If you know as much as possible ahead, it will give you a little bit more secure quote from the contractor. And also it's nice for designer to have a little bit of time to develop. And many designers, including myself, if client comes during construction and maybe if it's a long project, you might still have time to develop the scheme while they're doing groundworks. There might be still time, but it does still put lots of pressure, and some decision might be a bit rushed and might not necessarily be the best decision because you don't have time to explore enough of that. So I think knowing like understanding the timelines, understanding that personality really matters. You have to have a right dynamic, and I guess the aesthetic, if it really matters to you, you have to find a designer who provides that. If you're a bit more flexible or like to explore, then I guess that can be a bit more. But I feel like if you're very particular, it's good to kind of find designer who will deliver what you're looking for, because otherwise it will be friction, and that's never a good way to work together. Yeah.
Interesting. How it's like dating, it feels like.
Yeah, it is a lot of that. Yeah. I guess like thing with interior design, the relationship eventually will end. I mean, obviously with dating, if it goes well, you kind of end up being together forever, but kind of is a similar way. It's like it has to work, because especially it's ebbs and flows as well. Like when you do construction, there's always a low point where everyone is slightly fed up, slightly frustrated, because there's lots of problems and everyone kind of slightly on the edge and hates each other. But then you have to keep that positive emotional feeling. Just make sure, we kind of like need space, but we don't want to kill each other. It is kind of a bit like, I guess like any relationship, you kind of need to give each other space, but then make sure you walk with each other when problems come up.
Oh, yeah. there's so much like psychology involved and like on like higher levels actually, because it's not like an office job where you kind of have your teammates, you come in, you have a boss, and you kind of like, here everyone is kind of a boss on their own space, especially the client who is like, this is my home.
Yeah.
Like I wanted, and so there's so much, it feels like landmines that can be stepped on.
Yeah, it can be like that. But yeah, it's
not to be so dramatic, but yeah.
Yeah, because it is like there's different egos involved, different dynamics. But I feel like this is where I guess the relationship, like with any relationship, I think having a respect for each other, it's actually quite key. Because kind of being slightly humble, but also respect each other as well. Because if client just comes in, it's my home, I do what I want, it's how we're doing it, and I don't care what everyone else thinks. So I don't really work very well with person like that. Yeah. So if client comes across like that, I'm like, this will be a job where there's two designers, and that's never a good idea. So like if client is like that dynamic, I'm like, sorry, I'm not very good with working with you, because if you feel like, if you don't respect my input, it's no point for me to be involved. So there has to be certain respect for me as a professional. I know what I'm doing, and trust, and I'm going to deliver what they want. So that's quite important for me. But then it goes other way as well. So I need to understand it's their home. It's not my home. It's their home. They have to live with that. Yeah. So whatever I'm designing, it's not me who will be dealing with that. It will be them. And respecting that. And then also respecting that they know how they live, and they know their habits and ways they use the home, and listen to that and make sure whatever I provide is for them. It's not my own thing. I guess it comes back to the ego as well. It's just like it's for them to live in. So there's always this dynamic, you know, if I design something and they look at it, they say like, well, actually that's not going to quite work for us because of X, Y, Z. I need to kind of make sure that I amend that design accordingly so it works for them. Because, you know, when you start working with each other, you make assumptions, but every client is different. So there's always like this kind of adaptation to the design to make sure it's molded for them, and having that respect for each other. Just like, you know, and at the same time, like, I guess I have to have a confidence as well. If they come up with some idea, because sometimes clients see something, you know, people, sometimes working with clients is like having kids and going to the sweet shop and they get distracted and you're like, no, we're not doing this. No, that's totally different. You kind of need to kind of keep an eye on them, because sometimes they, I just saw this. How about we do this? And you're like, but then you're thinking about all the other things it will affect. And you're like, but that makes no sense. And you have to have a confidence to tell them that. You say like, I know it's pretty, but really no. They're often like, okay, yeah, makes sense. So you have to explain why as well. You can't just reject it. You have to explain it. And if they respect you, they will listen to you. And often they do want to know your opinion if they see something pretty. And then you say, well, no, it's pretty, but it has nothing to do with that, your interior. But sometimes there might be something which they're really, really particular about, and they're not ready to let go of that idea. You as a designer, you kind of need to know when to stop, to keep pushing your, even if you might not fully believe in it, if they really set on it, you have to kind of eventually give up, because if they're not letting go of that, that's it's their home, and you just don't take a photo of that particular part, maybe, I don't know. Or it's kind of like it's a balance like that. And if I suggest some things which I really feel will make the home work or be really good in the home, but it's not necessarily what they were expecting, they might push back on that. But then it's good to fight for that idea, because if you really believe in it, and I had in the past where clients did say, I'm so grateful then you did convince us to go with that, because now I see how it works. But sometimes you need to fight for that a little bit. But again, if they keep rejecting it, eventually you kind of, okay, fine, they're not the right client for that particular thing. If they don't understand it, it's no point to force on them, because if you do force it on them and they end up hating it, they have to live with that. And then I feel not particularly good about it. So there's always a bit of a like, but still respecting each other's opinions, but still push. And I guess that's like with, you know, any relationship. Sometimes when you have your own opinion, you want to push it, but then it's push and pull as well. Like you're really not really working on another person. You have to kind of make a compromise or give up, and it's constant change like that. So it's very like it's very similar to friendships and romantic relationships. It's the same thing. You kind of constantly have to kind of, you know, adapt to each other and make sure you get what you want, but then also knowing when you give up.
There's so many people, they think that, design is just like a pretty interior, that's it. And then I'm just like, now being in this industry, and I kind of came from finance where it's only spreadsheets and numbers and different kinds of relationships to be managed. I'm understanding how much operational burden there is actually under those beautiful designs. And, like that the wiring has to be proper and like the air conditioning unit has to be functioning.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like, and the whole thing is like, actually it's basically a relationship management of all and orchestrating all of this.
Yeah. And I always say, like, when you study interior design, you probably should do psychology on the side, because lots of it is that. And just knowing, because it's not just clients, it's also knowing how to speak to builders. Because again, I feel like this often can happen because designers can feel quite arrogant. And I know, I'm the designer, so I do everything I want. But then if you speak to builders in not very respectful way, they will remember that, and they just will on purpose try to screw you up as well. They're like, there will be friction. So you need to understand they are good, talented people, and they're often very proud of their work. And you need to show them respect for that. You need to kind of understand how valuable their input is in the project, because if they don't build it, then your designs mean nothing. They're just paper.
Yeah.
Because we can't, we designers, we can't build anything else. We're pretty bad at that. We can't do that. We're not very skilled with our hands. We're skilled with our imagination, but not so good with building stuff. So they're very valuable. And I guess managing that as well, just making sure you get what you want, but you also don't hurt anyone along the way. And, because if you don't manage this relationship well, they're not going to go out of the way to help you. And you rely on the help to achieve what you want as well. And then, and understanding all the boring functions of the home, because the pretty stuff is actually easy. Because that's what we all start with. Everyone who wants to do design, creativity, this is what comes easy. That's why we gone to that field. It's just like it's something inside us. The creativity just comes to us, and in a way, that's the easy part, making that thing reality. That's the hard part. And I think this is what we get paid for, making it reality to exactly the vision we set out to do, because that's a really difficult thing to do. Just understanding the imagination versus reality and make it real. Yeah.
Do you also have clients who have come to you over and over again for different projects?
Yeah, I always have returning clients. And that's the best compliment, because, we've gone through this relationship. We had our ups and downs, and they're still coming back. It's like, okay, so I'm not totally screwed it up. Clients come back a lot, which is, I think, is the best compliment you can get. Obviously, when they refer you to their friends and family, that's a big compliment. But then coming back themselves, that's like another level, because they happy to go through with you through this process again.
But it feels like they enjoyed some part of it as well.
Yeah. And I feel like it's always nice to hear at the end of the project people say, it was, they really enjoyed working with me, because kind of makes you realize, okay, I'm doing something right, because, because when you, through the project, main thing you focus on is problems. Whenever problems come up, you have to come up with solutions. That's a big part of it, coming up with solutions. And you naturally have to focus on problems. This is pretty, okay, let's forget about it. But how about this problem? You spend more time on that. And sometimes that can feel a bit like draining. And when on the end, the client comes to you and they say they enjoy the process, it's kind of like little confirmation. Okay, what I'm doing is hard, but actually that's why I'm doing it, because it brings joy to someone. It's you create home for someone, they will enjoy it with the family for a very long time. And that's kind of like why every time you go through the process again, you're kind of happy. Okay, I'm ready now to go on another roller coaster.
But it kind of is like an adrenaline rush as well, I guess. And you find the joy and the fun out of the whole process itself.
Yeah. I think it's sometimes when you kind of come up with the problem and initially you're like, damn it, how am I going to deal with that? And you're kind of stewing on it and you're frustrated with that. And usually at that point, I can't focus on anything else. If there's a problem, I just can't, I just need, and when you resolve it, it's just such a good feeling, because you feel like really good, you're really strong, you feel kind of prepared for anything. And the more you do this over years, the more I guess it's kind of building a muscle over time, because you kind of done lots of things, and it helps you to anticipate potential problems and design in a way to avoid them to come up, but also helps you, gives you confidence. Then whatever comes up, you're gonna find a solution. And also knowing then you're not alone with it as well. It's not just up to you as a designer, because obviously there's a whole team behind you as well, to kind of knowing that. It's like, often people say, this designer is great that builds this home, but actually it's not just about the designer, it's about the whole team around it and the dynamic and chemistry between everyone involved. Because the more successful project is, the better the team was. Because if designer alone comes up with a great solution, but there's no team behind them to follow that, it's not going to be a great project.
Quite often there's the way you you go through the hardships, it's kind of like shows like also the relationship and the dynamics itself as well.
Yeah. But I guess that's just life. Is like I think we all imagine like, I just want to be happy, but actually that would be pretty dull, boring life if you just all dwelling. I feel like we humans thrive on solving problems. Obviously, when problems come up at that point, it's painful and you want to kill yourself. But then when you come up with a solution and when that problem is overcome, I feel like this is what the essence of life is in a way. Like it's what kind of makes us grow, makes us be stronger and kind of feel good about ourselves. And I feel like that's also in interior design. That's kind of, but every job, there's always a problem related to the job and resolving them, even though at that point it might be feel very painful. But hopefully when you come out, obviously you would never come out of it, it's a problem. But if you come out of it with a positive or even like negative, but like you kind of can take it on board and learn for the future. Because there were moments in my life where maybe a client was really unhappy, we screwed up projects because that happened, because it just cannot happen because you're learning, and at that point you do question like your skills and your abilities. But then you kind of like, rather than focusing on that, just thinking about, okay, it happened, I screwed up, I admit it, so what can I do better next time? And then you build on that. And that's what is quite important, just like taking these bad moments, which maybe didn't resolve in a positive outcome, but like learn from them and make sure you don't do them again, because that's where you grow, I guess. You learn from them. And I feel like that was quite valuable, even though they're very, very tough at that point.
Through those moments, there's some sort of like excitement about like, oh, actually I solved it and this was a hard one and I managed to get over it. And then it kind of like the next one comes around and they're like, oh, but I managed to solve all those different other things. Oh, okay, will I be able to do this one or not? And then you kind of go over it and it kind of creates that, I guess, competitive vibe as well, and the excitement shows also the professionalism.
And I guess that's what like with experience it comes that, and I guess it makes these moments less dramatic. It's just like, okay, shit happens, rather than like start panicking and feeling sorry for yourself. It's like just okay, fine. What are the solutions and just resolve them. I feel like it just manages to deal with stress a bit better as well, because you have the confidence like, okay, it happened. Can't return the time, let's just find a solution. And I feel like that just creates the much better experience of going through that problem as well. Because I feel like when you're less experienced, you're like, oh my God, and like start panicking and running around like a headless chicken, and that's not helpful for anyone. Because they just panic. Not the best way to deal with problems, but I guess you kind of need to go through life to learn to not deal with it. And I guess some people naturally may be better with dealing with stress. I feel like when I was younger, I wasn't particularly great at that because I never really learned how to deal with stress. My family is very chaotic. When stress happens, we all panic. That was my way how I learned to deal with stress. But I think as I grow on, I kind of realized that's not a good way to do it. So I need to kind of calm down, breathe a bit, and then focus on solutions. And then the more you do that, the more you kind of then feel able to solve them rather than just like panic.
Oh my God. Wanted to ask, what is your most meaningful project that you have been on and why?
Oh, it's quite a good question. I feel like I'm not sure if I have necessarily one as such, but I feel like some of the recent projects I've been finishing, I did feel like I'm kind of very proud of them. There's like a few new built homes which are kind of very custom to the particular client, or also that project I just finished in Notting Hill, which was kind of particular to the client. I feel quite good about them because I feel like I'm seeing the manifestation of my improving skills as a designer. And kind of where I'm going with my studio, I guess, just like this kind of really nice, big, beautiful homes, which are kind of like a dream homes for the clients in a way, and kind of seeing them moving into these homes and kind of enjoying them and giving me feedback about how they feel very calm and beautiful, how they enjoy the homes. These make me feel quite good about them. So kind of not like one project as such, but kind of what I've been doing recently, and kind of because I've been working on some of them for like over 4 years, and so kind of seeing them finally coming together and seeing them the big homes, and I managed to create them. Kind of felt like, okay, I can do big projects, like I can do it on my own, and it's quite satisfying, and seeing them coming out in a good way.
Is it in the south of England? One huge house.
Yeah, it's a Surrey house in Surrey. Yeah, so that one was one of them. Yeah, it's a new built home, and been kind of nominated for some awards, and magazines are very kind of been featured and things. So it got really good reviews and press. And it's kind of one of them is that like just kind of knowing that I can do that level house. There's still things I'm thinking, I could have done that better, could have done this better, because that's just how I am. And I'm very, most designers are really, you always focus on the things you didn't do well. But I feel like it was nice to see it together in this very unique home and just kind of being able to say, oh, I did that. You know, when I started working on it, I was like early 30s, and being able kind of do that at this age felt quite privileged in a way and gave me a bit confidence. Then, you know, I got this project because of my skill, not because, you know, I got lucky. I kind of felt like I really had to work for it.
Oh,
and it came out really well. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was absolutely stunning.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, I was looking, and because it's quite big as well, but it doesn't feel that big in a way. Because some houses, if they're ginormous, then they're like, feels a bit of like there's too much space, but it felt really...
Yeah, I think it's that balance. And I feel like this is what sometimes with these big homes, like, because I finished another one in Healing Island, which also had like big spaces. And it's always for me, like, how do I manage the proportions well so that it doesn't feel empty?
Oh, yeah.
Because, you know, if your room is really big and you put tiny bed in it, it just looks stupid. So it is like, you know, thinking about that. And it's quite important, because it's funny how like sometimes having less space can be almost easier. When there's a lot of space, it can create challenges, because you're like, how do I make it homely? And that's always difficult, especially in new build home, which is very contemporary, clean lines. You know, when you have work with period building, there's already so much character there you can grab onto. Where here, like, you have to kind of create something which still modern, doesn't, you know, but then also feels homely. So it's a challenge, yeah.
What has been like a solution that you wanted to implement that you haven't had a chance yet?
Oof. I think one thing I've struggled at the moment right now, because my portfolio is very light wood Scandi, people come to me because of that. And I really like to pivot a little bit. I like to explore a little bit more smoked oaks and, you know, kind of, I guess it's just me as well. Like, you know, I kind of like to try different things, still stay in the ethos of what I'm trying, still contemporary, calm, but like go a bit more that direction and maybe do implement a little bit more antiques. So, but kind of maybe a little bit Belgium style. But I find like it's really hard to move that direction. I'm slowly going there, but because when clients come to me with the expectation of my portfolio and I want to pivot them slightly different direction, it can be a bit hard because they don't expect that. And some of them are open to it, but some of them like, but I like that. And you're like, okay, so, okay. But, you know, I'm getting there slowly. But portfolio is always a little bit behind where you are at the point, because it takes such a long time to finish projects. It takes sometimes a year until you photograph it, because you need to let the house settle a bit. So I feel like that's what I'm currently trying. I'm trying to add a little bit more darker woods, a bit more rustic elements, but still stay with the contemporary, just because I like to mix it up a bit. I feel like that very Scandi look, it's something I've done for a while, so I like to pivot a little bit. So I feel like that's the challenge. So I keep forcing it on people until someone says yes. Which, if clients listening, I haven't been forcing anything on you, but so I will try a bit, but
yeah, I've been trying to redo my own kitchen, and I've been looking for a lot of different designs, and I see that actually Scandis, they implement the darker wood as well, and they take inspiration, I guess, more from the traditional spaces as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a nice mix of
just kind of add a little bit mix, because I did realize, like, you know, I'm implementing a little bit more like antiques into furniture as well. It's coming a bit more into my portfolio, because it is the history bringing in, because I felt like sometimes when you just put just contemporary, it can feel a little bit maybe two-dimensional. So just adding a little bit history is something I do really value. But it kind of just takes time, because I've been evolving, and I guess my portfolio reflects that, and clients come in. But it's just me slowly pivoting. But it kind of is, maybe because I'm losing patience a bit. Sometimes I want to do it all straight away, but it takes time. And I guess that's just how it is. But I got plenty of time to evolve. Maybe by the time my clients like dark woods, I'm into something else, you know, because you're always ahead. You're always thinking about something else, and projects are kind of, you know, because you want to do different things, because you don't want every project look exactly the same. So I always try to use new materials, new things, but always it will be repeating characteristics, which are always there at the same time, I guess, which are kind of my, I guess, core signature maybe.
Got it. Some quick fire questions in the end. What's your favorite furniture item and why?
I think as a whole, I really, maybe more like just not particular pieces such, but I do enjoy smaller things like side tables and things, or like side lights, or like floor lamps. I feel like they're really little layers of texture you can add to interior, which kind of can really transform the space without needing to do big things. I feel like I like kind of smaller, interesting pieces. Like I think like small items. I don't know if that necessarily answers the question directly. It's a bit.
But it's second one is actually going into that statement lighting or statement furniture.
I think statement lighting. I think like I really love some like really cool like floor lamp, which almost looks like a sculpture, but then keep the maybe furniture quite simple. But that I feel like for me that has a stronger statement somehow.
Yeah. One lamp that I wish I can get one day because there's no space in. Thing from Ligne Rosé. It's like a whale that just floats, but it's a lamp and it's glass. And I saw it and I'm like, I need this.
Because it becomes like art piece at the same time. So it's like functional art piece. And exactly. I do really like that combination where it becomes your sculpture, but it also gives you light. So I do like that. I don't know. For me, that really speaks to me.
Oh, yeah. It's like sometimes there are such things. That
they have two functions.
Yeah. If your design would be a cocktail, which one would it be?
Something like Negroni, well-made Negroni. Maybe forget the color, but like I always find it fascinating because it's just pure alcohol, but tastes so balanced. Like when you drink it, you don't think it's literally just alcohol. There's no mixes in it, but it tastes really balanced. And because it's when it's made well, that's the key. When it's made well, and I feel like maybe my interiors can be like that because if they feel effortless, that's why I feel like I've done really well. But the thing is like the reason to feel effortless because I put lots of effort into it. So I think it's the same thing, like Negroni feels balanced and tasty because it's been considered, like because if you put too much of one of the alcohol, it just will take over.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But not the color, I think.
Well, you're getting there.
I will think about color. Maybe if it's distilled or something, I don't know, somehow. So it's pure clear.
Oh my God. So gonna give some inspiration to mixologists.
Yeah, can you do a clear Negroni, please?
Yeah. First thing you notice when you walk into someone's home?
I guess it's just general feel of the space. What usually strikes me a lot, like when I walk into the space where there's lots of stuff just exploding in you, I feel like I need to sit down and just breathe. Obviously, I don't want to be rude, but I feel like just how the space feel generally, just like, because sometimes I walk into interior, which the design is something I would probably never do myself, but it feels really nice because when I've just been traveling, we stayed in one of the Airbnbs and the flat was just so lovely. And it was something I would never do for myself, but the balance was just so right and it just felt right. So I feel like when you walk in, it's just that, how does it feel? Like, it feels comfortable or feels overwhelming. But sometimes you walk in home and it just feels like nothing and you're just like, okay, that's fine. But like, it's just what the ambience of it, like what do people do? I feel like.
What are this kind of formula for creating that ambience?
I feel like it's just defining the right balance, which is really difficult thing to explain to someone. It's almost like in your gut, like knowing when to stop. And when you kind of go to the place which feels not too empty, but also not too much, where you just like you added enough things where it feels complete. Mm-hmm. And that's very hard thing to do because it's very intuitive and it does come with the time. And maybe when you just do your interior without, some people naturally have that more than others, I guess, but it's something, I feel like that's the hard thing. And that's what kind of needed to know, just like adding different elements and they can be contrasting, but knowing when to stop, keep adding. Mm-hmm. Because almost having ideas is the easy part because there's, people creative naturally anyway, but then there's also so many ideas shouting at us through Pinterest, Instagram, but knowing when it's enough, when I reach that perfection point. But not too soon as well, because if the home feels slightly unfinished, that's not right either. So it's just, I feel like, it's not a formula to give to someone. It's like, it's a bit more fluffy.
Got it.
Yeah.
Also letting for the space to settle in, I guess, as well.
Yeah. And I guess maybe doing things with the stages as well, just like, don't just like go and just put stuff into space. Just allow space to evolve, live in it and just see how you feel and then keep adding. I guess keep adding things that matter as well, not just buy.
One piece of advice you would give to someone styling their home?
I think when you style your home, think about the outcome you want to create. Like try to imagine the final picture because that will keep guiding you because it's really hard to get distracted. There's just so many things available. If you have the vision in your mind all the time, it will guide you through the shouty everything. So because that's how you will achieve nice balanced home that speaks to you. Mm-hmm. So I feel like, having final vision pretty much is a starting point for everything.
Okay. It was such a pleasure to have you.
So nice
today.
to be here.
Yes. And can you share also where people can find you?
My company is Yam Studios. So yamstudios.com is my website, or at Yam Studios is my Instagram. So I usually post there as well. And then from there as well, I have my personal Instagram. I like to take photos of architecture in my spare time. So that's kind of on my personal one. So I share that as well. But yeah, at Yam Studios, pretty much that's where I'm.
Got it. Oh God, it was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
Yeah, have a good day.
Yes.